This is fun. All right, so we will. Do you want to be the slater? Go ahead and slate. Yep. All right. Well, welcome. This is Teri Edmonds, and you are hanging with us here in Kula in Hawaii, and I am honored to interview Don Clements. He is a fellow cobbler, and this is the first of my Cobbler Series videos that you might have seen with my discussion with Yapping with Teri and Dave. But I'm really excited. I find that there are a lot of cobblers out there, and each of us have our own story. And each of us get asked, how did we get into it? And I want to hear, I know some of Don's story and I want to share it. And so this is Don Clements. Hi, Don.
Hi, Teri. How you doing?
Thanks for joining me and serving mimosas and chips. This is awesome. Good day at the office.
Get drunk, we'll talk easier.
Yeah. So I met Don a couple, was it 2 years ago? Or
I think the first time was in 2010.
Okay, yeah. And Don came in. Tell me about that. Remind me of.
I had vacationed over here in 2008 and then again in 2010. And whenever I go to a new city, I always look up cobblers. And so I just went in and introduced myself and got to know you a little bit. And then I came back in 2012 and saw you a little more and talked a little more. And at that time, I was thinking about moving here. Yeah. And I just liked it so well. So.
Yeah. And I was working by myself in the shop, the shoe repair shop, and I was working really, really hard all the way up until last year. I was by myself, and Don came in. He's like, I'm here. I'm going to stay for about a year, and if you need some help, I will help you out for a month for free. I will not forget that, because I was very paranoid of having other cobblers come in, and I'm the only one on the island, and so I was very nervous about it, but I really needed the help. And Don came in, and I knew his energy was good right away. And so anyway, he did. He came in and he helped me for a month. And he said, you can see if you like working with me or not, but it was awesome. And so we've actually become fast friends. Our social network, our closest friends really are all the same now. We have our beach Saturdays and we spend a lot of time together. So that's fun. So now I'm going to move on to Don's story because I think it's very interesting. And Don, what I'd like to have you talk about first is, where you're from and a brief history before you became a cobbler.
Okay. From central Indiana, about 15 miles east of Indianapolis, a little town called Greenfield. I'd lived a couple other towns in and around Indianapolis over the years. After graduating high school, I went to Purdue and got a degree in industrial management, which I never really put to use, but when I graduated in '82, the economy was in the toilet. Weren't a lot of jobs yet. I was married at that time and followed my wife up to Milwaukee where she had a job. And then my first job was a scab at an industrial woodworking shop. They were on strike.
What's a scab?
A guy who crosses a picket line.
Oh.
But the two guys who ran the woodworking shop, or the employees, were like 70 years old and just waiting to retire. So once they were gone, then it wasn't going to be a union in place anyway. So anyway, so I worked there for a few years until my father passed away, and then moved back to Indiana and helped the family run a car dealership that they owned, that they'd had for 4 or 5 years. I did that for about a year, parts and service manager. Didn't enjoy it, was looking for something else. So I got on as an inspector at a fan factory and did that for a few months. But in the meantime, I'd been talking to a lady who owned a construction company, and she was looking for an estimator. Well, part of that's what I did in college was I minored in civil engineering. So I got on there as an estimator, helping her run her small family concrete construction company that her husband had, who had passed away. So we did that for a few years, and then she got into some financial problems, and it was kind of going to go away. So then I got on at a factory in town that made parts for Chevy Lumina vans, if you remember those fiberglass parts. So I did that for a year or so, and then from there I got on at a big factory in a city called Muncie, making power transformers like you see at power plants and substations way out in the country.
Oh, interesting.
So they call them large power transformers. It was a Westinghouse company.
And what were you doing there?
I started as a supervisor on second shift, supervising 30 or 40 people, but many times I'd be covering 80 or 90 people over 5 or 6 acres in 10 different areas.
Wow.
Yeah, at nights and weekends, because other supervisors had days off and I was the young guy. And it was a hardcore union place, had a lot of union problems. I personally caused a couple of wildcat strikes because I didn't follow the rules. But I was more concerned about getting things done. And plus I just didn't know any better, you know, young, green, and
of course.
And yeah, just trying to get my job done. But anyways, through the years of doing that, I was there for 5 years. And the company went through 3 or 4 downsizings. And each time, a couple times I was supposed to go, got saved at the last minute, but always ended up with someone else's job.
Right.
So at the end of 5 years, I was doing what 5 people had been doing 5 years prior.
Right.
And I was working 80 hours a week and exhausted and borderline nervous breakdown. So I was looking for a way out.
Right.
And the way that happened is my wife, the shoe repair shop I ended up buying, my wife went in on a Monday to buy it, or to get some shoes repaired. And he wouldn't do it because he was closing that next Friday to move out on Saturday. He'd been trying to sell it for a couple of months and had no...
And was he going to close no matter what?
Yeah.
Even if somebody bought it or not?
Well, yeah, because he'd been trying to sell it for 2 months and had got no response. So he was going to move it to his basement and just do it part-time, you know, a little bit or whatever. But he didn't want to. But that's what he was going to do. So he was a retiree from Western Electric. His dad used to do shoe repair. So he had bought all brand new equipment in 90. Well, this is 94, so I'm like getting new equipment. And so anyway, he was hesitant. Yeah, who's this guy coming in off the street? Doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right.
But my grandfather used to be a shoe repair guy. And I grew up hanging around there and shining shoes on Saturdays. My brother and cousins all went through that process as we got older. So I knew enough to be dangerous, and I'm really good with my hands.
Right.
So I can do about whatever I want. So my plant, it was Labor Day weekend that week. My plant was closed down for 4 or 5 days for equipment changeover. So I went in on Thursday to help him grind and finish some work that he had to do to show him that I knew what I was doing or
you could handle.
I had skills.
Right.
So he was okay by the end of the day Thursday. So I talked to the bank on Friday, talked to the landlords. By 4 o'clock Friday, I had bought it.
Crazy.
And so then I went back to work on Tuesday after Labor Day and gave him 2 weeks notice. So,
oh my God.
And that's how I got into the business.
About to become a cobbler.
Yeah. So own your own business, get out of the corporate rat race and see what happens.
And some interesting skills that you bring to the table, which I find is what I've found so interesting about you before your cobblering was your, and this came from being in the factory, was your, when you optimize space, you know?
I'm my main, after being a supervisor in the factory, I became what they call a scheduler. By the time I left, I was what they call the master planner scheduler.
Okay,
which is one of my fortes, is to schedule time, schedule equipment, schedule processes, do things quickly, efficiently, don't waste time, and just make everything happen.
How you use your space.
Plan it out ahead of time so you don't waste any time and do it right the first time.
Right.
And so that's just one of my natural skills and abilities. And that has helped a lot in the shoe repair shop. When I gave my company 2 weeks notice, I spent that 2 weeks studying the equipment and figuring out how to lay this out.
Right.
So I made the least number of movements. You know, the bench was here and the tools were here, and I just have to reach for that and turn around and do that. And all my supplies were within, you know, an arm's reach. So I tried to minimize movement and increase efficiency. And that's just one of my innate abilities.
Which was helpful because when he came into my shop, there was a lot of extra space. I mean, one of his things was, if you need my help getting this thing organized, you know, I see you've got this empty space here, you've got this here. And it's true, when you're working on a project, you really need your stuff right there. Minimize movements. You can get through your batch within a day. I mean, it cuts back on labor, right?
Yeah.
Hiring other people to help you get it done. So that's
you don't
interesting.
lose things.
So now going into the cobbling, here you owned your business for how long?
I had it for 20 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. I mean, I'm just coming up on I'm on 15 and a half. And 20, I mean, that's kind of a part of your life. Being a cobbler, you'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's the longest thing I ever did. I never lived in the house that long.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And so, funny enough, he has sold his business and moved out to Hawaii. And I guess one of my questions to you is, like, where do you, one, I have a couple questions. One of them would be, do you see yourself using your skills as a cobbler again in your future?
I am open to it. I don't have plans to do it, but I've living here a year, not having a job and not having anyone around. I learned I have to do something.
Right.
I go nuts just sitting around.
It's in your nature.
Right. So if I was in a situation where I could work for somebody part-time, flexible hours, whatever, I would do that. I am open to working full-time if I need to or have to, but I don't want to get into that situation if I can help it. But if I do, I know I can always quit and go do something else.
Right.
I'm not, financially independent, but I don't have kids, I don't have debt, I don't have any animals, I don't have nothing. So it leaves me the ability to be pretty flexible, do what I want when I want, and try different things. I don't have to
And
worry
it didn't come easy. I mean, as I understand, you worked really hard. When he had his business, he was working how many hours a day?
When I first started, I was alone for the first year or so. I'd put in some 20, 24-hour days. I'd take naps, I'd sleep there and stuff. As it got going and as I got faster, then eventually, on average for a few years, I was working a good 15 hours a day.
Right. That's a lot.
Yeah, and I would go in on Saturdays and Sundays and work because I had to take up paperwork. And as the shop grew, I also got into retail more. And I was selling more shoes. So I was also kind of a little shoe store. Yeah. So then you have to deal with inventory and ordering and packing and unpacking boxes.
And the bookkeeping.
And then exponentially it grows and you've got to input invoices and receive bills and input bills and pay bills. And then it just grows exponentially. So and then you just got all the taxes and all the bureaucracy that you got to keep up with. So I'd have to do that a lot on Sundays, the whole day Sunday. Now I'd sit there and watch a race or a football game or something and do it. But I'd be there all day. But there again, I didn't have any kids or whatever. And by then I was divorced and just had lots of time.
Right.
But in the end, the last probably 3 or 4 years, last 6 years, I quit Saturdays.
Nice.
I just decided...
That's a big benchmark.
Yeah, I just decided that if I can't survive without Saturdays, then I don't need to be doing it. And I like to do other stuff on the weekends. But I still worked a lot. And then I got to where I did probably 12-hour days the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, it was because I opened at 7 because I serviced steel toe boots to factories.
Right.
And they had first, second, third shifts. So I would open at 7 so third shifters could come in. And then I closed for several years at 7, then later on at 6 o'clock. Wow. So, I mean, my store was open 11 hours. Right. By the time you get there a half hour before and stay over 1, 2, 3, 4 hours after, generally your minimum 12-hour days.
Now, let me ask you, because that's pretty typical of an entrepreneur, right? I mean, we think we open up a business. Everybody thinks you open your own business and life is so great. It's tough.
Yeah.
And you almost end up working harder than you would have if you were just getting a paycheck. But would you have done things any differently?
Probably not. And here's the way to tell. A year or 2 after I did it, I was feeling sorry for myself, lamenting, what did I do? So I went back to visit my factory. I hadn't heard much from anybody there, so I think it was 2 years after. So I went back to the factory, and I wasn't in the door 5 minutes when I said, I don't care how bad the shop gets, it's better than this. You know, because they were still fighting the downsizings and moving. Are they going to move to Canada or move to some other state?
Right.
And everybody's unhappy and all this kind of stuff and miserable and hateful. And so, you know, that made me decide that, you know, no matter how bad it gets, it's not that bad.
Right.
And then plus, as I started making money and got the flow and I was learning to do the work faster and could turn it over more and all that kind of stuff, I got to where, you know, I knew I could close the door whenever I wanted.
Right.
Yeah, I could
need be
go hunting for a weekend, close the door, leave.
Yeah.
Now, I rarely did it, but
right.
I always knew I could.
Exactly.
And that's what gave me the
right.
You know, and you know, I went through, you know, a year and a half, 2 or 3 different times of working alone. Mm-hmm. And that's really tough because it's hard to go make a bank deposit or do appointments or any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Then over the years, I always had like at least one girl working for me during all those other years. And, you know, they'd work the counter and deal with the people mostly and do the small rips and repairs and that kind of stuff. And one of them, you know, wasn't into all that. She was more into paperwork, so I let her run the paperwork end of it, and then you know, I did all the other stuff. So I figured I had to do it all one way or the other. So I would let whoever I hired kind of do whatever their forte was,
right.
As long as they kept busy all day, and then I did everything else around that.
So if you could, would you consider yourself an artist?
Not so much. I was more of a grunt, repair, shoe kind of guy. I would do some projects for people, like rebuild something old or duplicate something old or maybe make a holster or a knife sheath, but they were very basic, very standard. So there's some artists involved in that.
Right.
But, you know, to me in the leather world, people are the artists or the people who do stampings, or we had a guy in our town who made these real fancy holsters, or, you know, people who do fancy things to shoes and decorate them and that kind of stuff, all which I could have done, but I had so much just basic repair to do that I just pumped out constantly. I just never got into doing that stuff. Got the skills, got the ability. I don't have the artistic mind. I'm more of a architecture, draw a straight line kind of guy.
Right.
But
production.
Yeah, production and that kind of stuff. So I see the stuff and like it. I can duplicate it, but I'm not good at imagining it to do it right.
Well, and there's the other thing is to do artistic work like that, one, you have to secure the clientele that's willing to pay you what it's going to take. Yeah. Because I look at it, I need to make $500 a day. Mm-hmm. And if it takes 2 days to make a project, that's $1,000. One, do you have a client? Do you have a steady clientele that you can do that? And do you have a staff to back up your shoe repair while you're doing that? So it's challenging to take on artistic work. But shoe repair is artistic.
Yeah.
Even you were mentioning earlier that it's kind of fun to get into a project. You've got the game going, and you know your brain's kind of working on this thing, and there's something about it. Mm-hmm. I heard it builds gray matter when you are actually doing art. They say in the old times, some of the old cobblers would actually bring in musicians who would, like a little violinist who would play while they're doing their work, you know, or somebody would read the newspaper to them while they're working, and I find that to be kind of true. Mm-hmm. But I have another question for you. Name 3 things you dislike the most about being in shoe repair.
This is going to sound odd, but I hate customers. You need them, you got to have them, and I was very good to them and put on.
You're nice as pie.
You know, but it was mostly from the point of view. I have this huge pile of work. I got so much scheduled I want to get done today. I just want to keep plugging away on it. And, you know, when people want to come in and, you know, there's 3 or 4 things about it. Most of them are really nice. And they want to chit-chat and talk and sit there and just BS with the cobbler all day long. Well, they don't do that with their doctor or their lawyer or any other profession. But I think you've got to talk. And I'm so work-oriented that so much of it would just go over my head, because it's like I want to take care of them at the counter, get the shoes in, get the shoes out, and get back to work. That was my soul. That's just how I thought. So as nice as they were, it was still a pain. And then there's another group of customers who I call consumer commandos. And they come in and they want something for nothing. They want to tell you how to do it. They nitpick everything you do, even though you did this fantastic thing to this piece of junk that they had and didn't charge you much for it. Then they would go nuts about it when they picked it up and bitch and complain and give you all kinds of hassles.
Consumer commando.
Yeah,
I'm
consumer
gonna remember
commandos. That. And so, you know, those are kind of the two main type of customers that just kind of drove me nuts. Other things I didn't like about the profession is back when my grandfather did it, leather shoes were leather shoes, leather soles, leather heels, you know, a few rubber heels back in the day, but they were very, very few supplies, very basic, easy to work on. Same thing all the time. Nowadays, they're constantly designing and changing materials and rubbers and how they make stuff, and you always got to figure out how to tear something apart and can you put it back together. And some of the materials they use, you can't get glues to stick to them.
Is the glue gonna stick?
And yeah, and you know, I had like 5 different kind of glues that you would try, and I might test all of them on something, and they still wouldn't stick together. And so that's a hard part of the profession. That's where, you know, I was in a rural area, did a lot of factory boots, farmer boots, construction boots, that kind of stuff. You know, being in a city would be nice, where you're doing shoes for doctors and lawyers and accountants and business guys, and they're mostly Allen Edmonds and Johnson Murphys and good leather, easy to work on shoes. But you know, that's where I chose to be, or that's where I bought the shop, and you know, that's, you know, it is what it is. So. And
I understand. I mean, I believe you stopped doing resoling work boots, right? At some point, you did resole work boots.
Yeah, I did. I rarely turned anything down.
I refuse to do work boots. I mean, to me, I feel like they take so much time and so much.
It's hard physical labor. I mean, people don't realize how physically hard it is, especially to tear something apart. Because again, the way they're put together with glues, your wrists and you know, some glues you can heat up and they'll soften, some you can use glue thinners, but some you can't, so it's all brute force or grinding, and there again, materials are getting so hard, they're hard to grind. And you know, you fill the place up with smoke and you know, all kinds of stuff. So.
Speaking of which, I want to know, because I know you had new equipment, did you have some kind of, what was your ventilating system? Did you have a fancy ventilating system?
No, I did not. They, in the industry, they promote that you should and you do and that kind of stuff. Now, there again, my newer, bigger grinder had a heavy duty fan and had 12 tube filters in the back, and you know, it sucked everything in. You know, very few things got out. Like, it didn't make my whole space dusty. Like a lot of shoe repair shops you go to, you get a layer of dust. Well, mine didn't do that because the machine sucked it all in pretty good. You know, I was I'm a go for broke kind of guy, so I didn't wear gloves. I didn't wear ear. I tried ear protection, but working alone, you can't hear customers come in.
That's right.
And so I had people sneak up on me one too many times, and plus it made me hot, so I didn't do ear protection and that kind of stuff. And I figured something's got to kill me, so if it's this, it's this. You know, so that's the way I was.
I find your background so interesting. The fact that you did this shoe repair for 20 years, I find is really amazing to me, because I do think you're an artist.
Yeah.
You know?
And I could have done it longer, but I was getting some physical, you know, my feet were hurting standing on them all day, that many hours. I was getting some arthritis in my hands and fingers. I got a couple of bad shoulder joints. So it was just getting to be, the pain of it was more than I wanted to deal with. And I knew it was only going to get worse.
I guess that would take me to your future. I know you're intending on leaving Maui here in the next 30 days. So your friends are trying to squeeze you into our social time. But where do you, I guess, I have a couple questions. Let's address one at a time. The first one is, where are you going right after here?
Right after here, I'm going back to Indiana. It will have been 3 weeks shy of a year since I left.
Wow.
And you know, obviously you got to go visit and see people, you know, once in a while. So I'm going back, hopefully to take care of some family matters and, you know, a couple personal things. Depending on how those items go, I may end up moving to Florida in 6 months or so. And the purpose for that is, from there, 12 to 15 hours, I can drive home to take care of family and be close to people. I may buy a farm in southern Indiana. I like to hunt. It's one of my big outside activities. and
Jeremy will go over there and visit you so you can go hunting. Damn it, you better catch
finally
something soon.
Finally get him a deer. So that's an option, and then coming back over here is an option. I would just live in a different area than what I did. I've learned a lot since I've been here. I've learned areas I like, areas I don't like, and places I want to be.
Yeah.
So I have the option of coming back here.
This place that we're recording right now is up in Kula, and we're going to probably show a little bit of footage. We're going to show you really close to where Oprah lives, and we might take a little, I don't know, we'll see what videos we come up with. I might have a little extra footage for you to see where it is, but it's pretty beautiful, and it's easy to stay up here. That we are trying to get him to come down closer to us so that we can play more often.
From up here is a 45 minutes an hour drive down to the water and the beaches and the activities.
Yeah, it's tough to load up for the day.
Right.
Okay, so one of my other questions is, you know, you've got flexible financial freedom. You really do. You've done well. You've worked hard. You set some money aside, and you do have the flexibility to work whatever you want to do. But what are two things you would definitely like to do that are on your bucket list for your future?
Two things I would like to do, which my financial condition does not allow this at this point.
Damn it.
But if I work part-time and save money, it might be what I would spend that money on. But one of the biggest ones, I like to hunt. I've been moose hunting a couple times up in Canada. The moose where we go, we only get like 55, 60 inches is a big one. Well, up in the Yukon and the Alaska area, you can get 70, 72-inch moose. So that's antler size, like how far across they are.
Wow,
so that's always a dream of mine, is to go get a big moose.
Okay.
Something I'd like to do. And then another thing is I like Australia and New Zealand, and I'd like to go spend a month traveling around those areas. The topography and just the uniqueness of different parts of it fascinate me. So
very interesting. Yeah. We ultimately want you to come back and visit. You should get a return plane ticket.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely come back. I will. You know, if I can afford it financially, I would like to come back here like once a month or once a year for like up to a month.
Yeah.
Definitely every 2 years I'd come, and my intention would be to spend a month. I've been here on 3 previous vacations for. First one was 7 days and 10 days and 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a minimum to come over here to vacation. So I would like to come back for a month. And now that I know so much more than what I knew from just vacationing, I can really in a month have an action-packed full month, get a lot done, do a lot of things, and go. So whether it was every 2 years, and what got me coming over here, I have a sister that comes every 2 years, and she's been here 9 or 10.
Trina?
Yeah, Trina. I forget how many. She's been here several times. And the first time I came in 2008, I had just got divorced. Her partner wasn't going to be able to come because her father was dying. And so I said, well, I got nothing else to do. I'll go. You know, for a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Yeah. Well, then I came in 2010 and 2012, and I wanted to move in 12, but I had no way of selling my stores. Right. And then between 12 and 14, I had someone who wanted to buy my store. Right. And, you know, I broke up.
Glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Because
so I broke up the shoe repair shop and the shoe store to 2 separate people who wanted to buy them, and that's what allowed me to do what I'm doing now. To come over here,
well, and because you were saved money.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one of the things I mentioned about interviewing Don first was because he's really been financially savvy, and you're such a hard worker. You know, I think the reason why you find these cobblers that you see the 90-year-old guys still cobbling is because I think it's kind of a financial trap. I think there's not that much money where you can bring in extra help, and so you get stuck doing it. It's a great job. You don't want to go back to the factory, right? I mean, so. And you can support yourself, and if you're wise with your money, you can make it work. This is an example of making it work. And he's got a forever skill. I mean, you could go anywhere, and your attitude is amazing.
I even thought about setting up a mobile truck or a trailer and driving around the country.
Yeah, or helping out your friend Teri in case she ever wants to go on a vacation, finally. You could come cover.
Might be an option during one of those 1 month visits.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But you got to have fun, too, but still. Okay, so I'm excited. Thanks for joining us. I really am glad that Don was able to share his story with us. And subscribe to my channel for more of these. This is called the Cobbler Series. And if you have any questions post, feel free to post a comment. We will definitely get back to you. And thank you, Don, for making time and serving mimosas.
No problem. If you're a cobbler and you come to Hawaii, let's Teri up so you get an interview.
Okay, aloha.
Aloha.